of women were written by persons, and I found that some of those accounts to be suspect. So I went back and I did some research, and this is included in the forward, and pulled up people like Kempa Vita, who is connected with the Kingdom of the Congo in the 1600s. And she was an adamant fighter against European attempts to colonize Africa. And, people like her. And then 50 years after her death, Great Britain and Ireland, most people might not be aware, had a queen whose origins on both sides of her family were deep in African ancestry. Queen Charlotte, who ruled with King George III of England, who had a bloodline similar to Kempa Vita's. So these are the kinds of things that I tried to do to create connectivity for us in the present day, and then also worked very hard at trying to create that bridge so that when you look at movements like Say Her Name and Black Lives Matter and what have you, that you can see the links between what these people were doing in the past and what we're currently trying to do here in the present.
All right. And Ernie and everyone, put a pin in the year 1895. We're going to come back and talk about that year some more and talk about what was the Booker T. Washington philosophy versus the W.E.B. Du Bois philosophy. But we'll come back to that because right now I want to bring up Tiffany Pogue, and I want her to tell you about her research, her scholarship also, because everybody listening, you notice they're not just talking off the top of their head, what they think, what they saw on TV. They're talking about deep research that they've done to really look at the real history of our people. And that's what it takes to be a truth teller. That's what it takes to really make change in the societies, to know the truth of who we have been and who we are becoming. So, Tiffany, it was so beautiful. Daryl, myself, and all the TJC fellows, we were just so happy to see you in Selma, Alabama. What led you to come this year to the 59th anniversary commemoration?
Yeah, so it was actually my first time visiting Selma for Ridge Crossing, and it was presented as an opportunity from the organization I'm a part of, Stand Up Mobile. They took a busload of our group and also community members out to visit Selma to experience the Bridge March. And for me, it was just a surreal feeling to walk the path that our ancestors walked for our rights. So it was something that I've been looking forward to for a long time, and for that opportunity to present itself, I had to take advantage of it. But to know also that my TJC family was out there, I also had to connect with y'all and hang out with y'all, and that was really one of the most beautiful parts of it. It was being amongst my peers and spreading the word of what John Lewis stood for and our right to vote, and what all of those people who marched across the Selma Bridge and what they endured for our right to vote. And for it to be in my state and for so many people to come out, including the Vice President of the United States, it was beautiful, and I'm glad that I got to experience that alongside y'all.
Oh, my goodness. And what's so beautiful, Tiffany, is to explain to people that you're a TJC fellow, that you're a young person. You're not, you're one of the new, just amazing leaders that are out there, and you're making a difference. And you're a scholar. Tell people about the legacy, your own legacy as a descendant of the Clotilda and Africatown. A lot of people have no clue what we're talking about. Can you take a moment and just educate people about something we all should know about?
Absolutely. So my ancestors were captives aboard a ship called the Clotilda. So in 1860, it was years after the importation of slaves was outlawed in the United States. This man named Timothy Mayer, he was a local businessman, very wealthy white man in our community. He made a bet that he could sail across the Atlantic Ocean, capture a boatload of slaves, bring them back, and get away with it. Unfortunately, that story turned out to be true. And he sent a man named William Foster across the Atlantic as the sea captain to capture our ancestors. The slave trade in Dahomey, in what is now Benin, the Kingdom of Dahomey, they were still exporting slaves and using that as a way to raise funds for the kingdom. My ancestors were in barracoons, which were like cages that they would stay in until it was time for slave captors to come and acquire them. And when that happened, he brought 110 individuals onto the Clotilda. It was going to be 125, but a war broke out, and 15 of them got away. Of that 110, there were a handful of my family members aboard. My great-great-grandfather, Polly Allen, and my great-great-grandmother, Lucy Allen, were aboard the Clotilda. Initially, Polly Allen was married to a woman named Rose, and they were also on the boat. When they landed in the United States, Rose Allen had about 3 or 4 children, and in her early or maybe late 20s, maybe early 30s, she passed away in childbirth. And Lucy Allen was younger, and she had grown up, and she was maybe in her 20s or so after Rose Allen had passed away, and Polly Allen remarried to Lucy Allen. All of them, helped to build Africatown. Africatown is a small section of Mobile. It's in the north part of Mobile Bay, and it's currently in a poverty-stricken area, and it hasn't had a lot of economic development over the years. Initially, when they built Africatown, they had built their own businesses, their own church, their own school, their own graveyard, and it was a thriving community until there was a bridge that was built right directly in the middle of the community, and that cut off a lot of the economic stabilization of the community. As a result, the community has dwindled over the years, and their story was lost, because many people invalidated the story of the Clotilda because there was no quote-unquote proof. And in 2019, after a lot of research with so many different organizations and entities, they found the Clotilda. And when they found the Clotilda, it validated that story. And so now there's a lot of public attention on Africatown right now and the descendants of the Clotilda survivors. And it's beautiful to be at this point right now because we are shaping history in our everyday walks of life and our decisions and our actions.
Wow. Daryl, we oftentimes see this where people discount Black history, especially the oral history, and won't quote proof. And the Clotilda, when they found this sunken ship, because they sunk the ship, everyone, in order to hide the evidence of their crime, what they had done in bringing, people in, into the United States, some almost, some 40, 50 years after the importation quota of slaves was banned. And remember, it's the importation of Africans who were enslaved because prior to, quote, being enslaved, these were amazing, African artisans and teachers and cattlemen. And, they had so many, lives prior to the actual enslavement period. So there's just so much to be said here, Daryl. And I was wondering, obviously when you hear this story, your questions, for, Tiffany also.
Yeah, Tiffany, as people are learning about Clotilda and they're learning about Africatown, one of the things that's really interesting about the story, and I would enjoy hearing you share it, is that it appeared that the 110 people that were on the Clotilda brought all of their knowledge, their skills, and they wanted to really bring all of their heritage with them, their traditions with them, from their homeland to what they were recreating in Africatown. Can you describe sort of what the Africatown looks like to our listeners?
Yeah, so when they came over, they didn't speak English, and they passed down their language to their descendants over time. They passed down their cultural traditions, like the way that they danced, the clothes that they wore, certain ways that they celebrated, their religion. There were so many things about their lives that they tried to hold intact. And it's still alive today. Like, we have a landing ceremony that happens at in July. It's around the time where we believe that the Clotilda landed in Mobile Bay. And we celebrate in the way that our ancestors celebrated. We wore all white to the landing ceremony in commemoration of their legacy, and we hold space for them. We pour libations for them. And we pray for them, and we honor them by saying their names and remembering who they are and the lives that they lived. And that's the thing that we are trying to hold up and honor in the community in Africatown, but also spread throughout the Mobile community so that everyone in our city understands the importance of what happened in this location right on Mobile Bay.
Wow. And Ernie, this story of the Clotilda in Africatown is lost to so many people in our history. But let's talk about something that is the reason why we do know to talk about, the whole Clotilda incident. And that's because the Cujo, and some people say it's Kojo, if you go into the African language from which the people of Africatown are descendant, but it would not have been known to us except for Cujo Lewis, who, bought some of the land to make sure that Africatown could be built to preserve the history, that he had that kind of vision, and he himself had been enslaved. But it was his encounter with somebody named Zora Neale Hurston, everyone. Zora Neale Hurston, that made this story possibly to be named. You want to talk a little bit about Zora Neale Hurston, why it was so important that it was her who did this research and did this interview. I'd love to hear from both of you about her role in this.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks again, Tiffany, for that. You've got me now thinking about trying to arrange my schedule so I can get down there.
Exactly.
Right. And just the visuals, Tiffany, really quickly, when you were talking about the ceremony and dressed in white, all of a sudden I had these images of the film Daughters of the Dust. I mean, it was like, and the Gullah Geechee community. I mean, all that was like kind of intersecting for me. So thank you so much for that. In terms of Zora Neale Hurston, really has blessed us with so much than just a story here. Through his original name, Cujo's original name was Kosula. I'm not sure if that's the correct pronunciation, but really because of the way she chose to write that story and compile those interviews, she reminds us of the ugliness of American history, that history that today so many are trying to erase. And we not only hear Lewis's voice, his trauma, his loneliness, we experience and feel him in his pain. In fact, I think one critic said we don't get a textbook version of this national scar. We're let into the humanity of it. He allows us to touch what people felt and feel the pulse and the heartbeat of that history. And that was just, that's something that's just rare in terms of how you capture a person's life. And that's critically important, particularly because as we as adults, and we're trying to obviously help our children understand those are things that they can grasp and feel, more importantly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the Zora Neale Hurston, she came down to the South to document the lives of people who endured slavery and just the Black experience. And she ran into